Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
Greetings, and thank you for joining me, Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Listen on air or online at iHeartRadio, Odyssey, TuneIn app, smart speakers, nccradio.org, or on our own award-winning WHPC app, where you can get all of the broadcasts from 90.3 WHPC. Herbally Yours brings you the latest information about the many facets in the world of natural living. Today, we are so happy to bring on board as our guest Evert Hopman, who is a very accomplished author, and today's book is called The Sacred Herbs of Yule and Christmas, Remedies, Recipes, Magic, and Brews for the Winter Season. Ellen is a master herbalist and homeopath who has been a Druidic intimate since 1984. She is the author of many books, including Secret Medicines from Your Garden, The Sacred Herbs of Shamhan, and A Legacy of Druids. And she lives in Massachusetts. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ellen.
I know this isn't the first time we've done this.
Actually, I believe we have radio shows going back into the 1980s.
Wow.
Well, we do. Our shows have been on since 87. And
Okay.
I believe you have been a guest with every one of your books when they come out, because we're herbalists. And, we do a lot with magic and herbalism and homeopathy. So all of your topics are very much something that, we love to talk about. And I just want to say the cover of your book, The Sacred Herbs of Yule and Christmas, Remedies, Recipes, Magic, and Brews for the Winter Season, is beautiful, as are all the amazing illustrations in that book. Let's talk about who did that? Did you have an illustrator? Are you an artist also? And who designed those fabulous illustrations?
Well, for this book, the publisher, Inner Traditions, used an in-house illustrator. And I kind of worked with them because the original cover that they came up with looked nothing like that. Every once in a while that happens. They'll come up with a cover that, the cover was gray and it had a picture of a martini glass or something. And I said, no, that doesn't imply Christmas.
But it's the whole illustrations in the whole book really bring out the information that you're sharing.
Well, that was some of those, I'm looking at it now, some of those I found myself vintage illustrations of elves and nisser, the Scandinavian term for elf. Some of those I found, but most of them, it looks like those were found by the in-house illustrators at Inner Traditions. But they did a fabulous job. I mean, they're wonderful. You just have to work with them sometimes, and I make a few suggestions and then they come up with something fabulous. Sacred Herbs of Yule, Sacred Herbs of Spring, Sacred Herbs of Samhain. Samhain is the old word for Halloween. They all have amazing covers, and they were all done by in-house artists.
Well, they really reflect and bring out, I think, that old-fashioned flavor of the traditions that you're sharing. Because this is not something, people go, it's new agey, but it's really old agey. It's ancient.
The oldest evidence that I have a lot of history in the book, but 4,000 years ago, I love this. 4,000 years ago, the Egyptians decorated their homes with greenery at the winter solstice, and they made fruit cake. And they shared fruit cake with each other. And they also left fruit cake on graves as grave offerings. But, you kind of wonder, where did these traditions come from? Where did they start? Next time you have a piece of fruit cake, you can thank the Egyptians.
Well, tell me this. I mean, you have such deep roots in the entire, that culture. What is the order that you were actually like a present of?
Tribe of the Oak. I was Archdruid of Tribe of the Oak until very recently.
What
I recently handed it over to a new Archdruid, which I'm very happy that I did that because I founded the order in 2014. I created the order, and I've been training people and running public rituals online. And we have a public page on Facebook that has almost 2,000 people. And then we have a website, tribeoftheoak.org, O-R-G. We also have a private page on Facebook for people who want to study towards initiation. But I mean, I've been doing this. I've actually been a Druid for 40 years, and I've co-founded 3 Druid orders, but that was the last one. And then I finally handed it over to somebody else, which to me says that the group can survive. Because if you can peacefully have a peaceful transition of power, nobody got mad, nobody ran off. It was just a peaceful transition of power. That tells me that the group can carry on, which is wonderful.
Right. And so you're happy to start it and you're happy to pass it along.
Right. Exactly.
So, because those things are also a lot of work, but you're doing a lot of ritual and remembering a lot of these ancient traditions. So when we talk about something that everybody would be familiar with, let's say, that would be a Christmas tree. And how did that custom come to be?
Well, the modern myth is that Martin Luther invented the Christmas tree, but it goes back way before Martin Luther. In the Middle Ages, they had these passion plays about Adam and Eve, and they would always do those around the winter solstice time. And I think it's probably because everybody was busy in the fields, working in the farm during the summer and harvesting in the fall. So the logical time to get everybody probably into the church or the town hall to watch a medieval passion play would be in the winter, because that's the only time when you have time off, And Adam and Eve, according to the Bible, there's a whole story with the snake, and there is no apple in the Bible, by the way. That's another modern invention. There's a tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And so in the passion play, they had to have a tree. And so the best kind of tree to have was probably a conifer, because it's still green in the middle of winter. Otherwise, what you're going to get is something absolutely bare with no leaves on it, So they would cut down a pine and use that in the play. And originally they were decorated with communion wafers, round communion wafers hanging off the tree. And then apples, because in the Middle Ages, they couldn't think of anything nicer than an apple. So they thought, gee, if Eve tempted Adam, she must have had an apple, because how else could she tempt him, So, and again, there's no apple in the Bible. You can go check. But
there's no apple and snake in the Bible?
There's a snake. There's a serpent in the Bible, right. But there's no apple.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, so the apples are red. So now you have the light, flour and water communion wafers hanging on the tree. And now you have red apples hanging on the tree. And it kind of went on from there. And then eventually guilds of merchants started setting up trees in the town square. And it wasn't until much later that people had the idea to bring them into the house. And actually, it wasn't until the time of Victoria and Albert, which would have been in the 1800s in Britain, that Albert popularized. It was really Albert, because it was the Germans were doing it in the home. Nobody else was. And so they popularized it, and there were tin types and, illustrations, posters of Victoria and Albert with their kids. And I actually have a picture of it in the book with their tree. And so it became very fashionable to have a Christmas tree in your house, which was a German custom. And it came from Albert, really.
That's an interesting history. So I'm just going to veer off our Christmassy and herbs of the winter season topic for one moment, because you are and have been involved with homeopathy for many, many years. Mm-hmm. And I just want to veer off a little politically here, because are you aware that the FDA and FTC is working on making it impossible to get homeopathics?
Again?
Oh, much more so now. Oh, very, very
It's been going
strictly.
on since the 1920s. It was since the Flexner Report in 1928. They keep trying to do that. No, I didn't know about the latest. What's the latest?
So the latest, so you should know, is let's say you wanted to suggest that a client get some because it's so amazingly effective and inexpensive. But both Amazon and Walmart have been instructed by the FDA and FTC not to sell any homeopathic remedies anymore.
Well, I did. Yeah, I saw that Whole Foods, I think, was considering
not
dropping.
That's right. So it's going to be increasingly difficult to get.
So people need to make their own. You can make your own.
You can.
Or you can order it from the pharmacies like Boiron, Boiron. Boiron is one. Homeopathic Education Services is another one. Or you'll have to order it, I guess. I mean, will they still be allowed to sell it?
No, no, they will not. So it's going to be very, very difficult. That's right. So,
oh my God.
Yeah.
All right. So people need to learn how to make their own.
Right. That's a good thing to do. And also learn how to get some now if you still can. Like the older walk-in health food stores, they'll still have them for a while on the shelves. So if you hear this show, go in and buy a kit, and then you can learn how to use it later. Because, I have a kit that I got in 1973. My son was born in 75, so he just turned 48. So this kit is 50 years old, and they don't actually expire. So once you get it, you can keep it a very long time. It does have an expiration date, but it doesn't actually expire. And then you can take classes in homeopathy and learn how to use, especially the first aid.
The National Center for Homeopathy has classes. I mean, I took a lot of classes with them, but they're on the East Coast. I don't know who there is on the West Coast. I mean, there's the naturopathic colleges, of course. John Bastyr and National College of Naturopathic Medicine are on the West Coast. You can learn how to do it, but oh boy, it's not hard to do. I mean,
but I just wanted to
I'll tell a story. I decided to do approving on myself. Approving is when you make a remedy and then you take it for a while to see what it does to you, because what it causes, it cures. Similia similibus curantur. So I decided, since I had phytolacca, which is pokeweed, growing in the yard, I said, well, okay, I'll make a nice poke root homeopathic remedy, a 6C remedy. Okay, so what does that mean? You tincture the root, and then you have one, after you make your tincture, which just means cutting up the root and soaking it in alcohol, vodka, the kind of alcohol that you can drink, not rubbing alcohol. You let it sit for about 8 days. That's the standard. And then you strain it out. And then you take 1 drop of the tincture and you add it to 99 drops of alcohol.
Yeah, that would be a 1X.
That's a 1C.
But let me just throw out that I would not start with phytolacca. Please, anybody's listening. It's a pretty rough one to start out with.
Well, I'm just telling you what I did.
What you did.
This is my experience. Okay, so phytolacca is used for mastitis in cows and in women. Mm-hmm. And I'm a woman, so I thought, gee, I do approving. So you take that 1 to 99 gives you 1C. C stands for centesimal or 100. Then you take 1 drop of that and you add 99 drops of alcohol. And each time you dilute, it's called succussion, where you shake and pound it against, I pound it against my palm, and I just do that repeatedly for a while. Then you take 1 drop of that. Each time you take 1 drop of the dilution, and then you add 99 drops of the alcohol. And I did that 6 times. So I had a 6C potency, which is that's considered a low potency. Yeah. And so I took it. Low potencies you take 3 times a day, typically 1 hour before or after a meal. So I took it for a few days, and boy, did I developed basically the symptoms of mastitis.
Wow.
I mean, my breasts got really swollen, really sore. And I was so shocked. It's almost like you can't believe it, because it was so dilute. That showed me that it was active, that it was really doing something. And that's the principle of like cures like. So an herb or a mineral or a substance that will cause a set of symptoms in a healthy person will cure those symptoms in a person who is sick. But it's very simple to make the dilution. That's all you have to do.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to remind our listeners, you're listening to Herbal Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Listen live online at nccradio.org or iHeartRadio or any podcast venue of your choice. And you can always email us at whpc@ncc.edu or me directly at naturalnurse.com. Today, we are so happy to have as our guest a prolific author, Ellen Evert Hopman, who, if you're listening, you know she has a lot of deep knowledge on a lot of topics. And we're talking about her latest beautiful book, The Sacred Herbs of Yule and Christmas, Remedies, Recipes, Magic, and Brews for the Winter Season. So, Ellen, you told us a little bit about the Christmas tree. What about, goddess worship? We don't usually think about that. We have Santa Claus, but are there goddesses that are worshipped in the winter solstice time?
Yes. In each of the books in the series, I have a ritual that I wrote out. For the Sacred Herbs of Spring, I have a ritual for the goddess Flora. In the Sacred Herbs of Samhain, I have a ritual for the Morrigan, who is a Celtic goddess. Flora is Roman. And then in the Sacred Herbs of Yule and Christmas, I have a ritual for the Cailleach. She's a Celtic, she's the hag, but hag comes from hagios, which means holy. So the only Celtic creation story that we have involves the Cailleach walking through the landscape, dropping stones, and wherever she drops a stone, an island appears. So she's a creator goddess. And she's also the goddess of winter in many traditions. She's the one who causes the weather to change and causes the snow and the ice to appear. And then in the spring, she transforms herself into Bridget, who is the goddess of spring. But the ritual is in honor of her, Cailleach. There's a series of female gift bringers. I mean, in our culture in America, we think of Santa Claus, but there's a lot of female gift bringers that I found that I talked about. I also talk about lots of different spirits and elves and shamanic figures that are male. But what I found most interesting, of course, was the idea of female figures bringing gifts. For example, in Italy, La Befana, who is the Christmas witch, and she comes down the chimney. Does that sound familiar? And she doesn't have a sleigh with reindeer. She has a broom. So she flies around on her broom. She comes down the chimney. She brings toys for the children. And you're supposed to leave a new broom next to the hearth so she can bless it. And
that's
then
interesting because it's almost like that story repeats itself with different characters. That's very interesting.
Yeah, well, it has to do with cleansing. I mean, hers does. You take your new broom and she's blessed it, and now you can sweep out the house, sweep out the old, bring in the new year, all that. In Russia, there's Snow Maiden, who accompanies Grandfather Frost, and they bring gifts. And I mean, there's just a lot of them. There's in what they used to call Czechoslovakia, but what is it called now? The Czech Republic.
I don't know.
The Blessed Mother leaves gifts in children's shoes. In France, there's Lady Abundia, who is actually descended from a Roman goddess named Abundantia, the goddess of abundance, right?
So let's
there's just a lot of them.
Let's talk a little bit about the herbal remedies, since this show is Herbally Yours, associated with Yule and Christmas.
There's a lot of herbs that we think of at Christmas. For example, we tend to spice up our cookies and things with allspice. That's just one. And what I have in the book is I have individual plants, individual herbs. I talk about the medicinal properties. I talk about the magical properties. And then I give a recipe so you can actually cook with it. Once you know the magical properties, For example, allspice, which is an herb of abundance, luck, and healing. So if you want to bring abundance, luck, and healing into the house, you make cookies with allspice, but as you're baking them, what you're doing. I mean, this is called kitchen witchery,
Yeah, the use of intention. Absolutely.
Right. You have an intention. Apples are associated with love and immortality. Bayberry, they used to make bayberry candles. I guess they still do in some places, but that blesses the house and attracts abundance. Birch is a tree of cleansing. And so a lot of people I don't know about a lot of people, but my friends will choose birch for a Yule log, for example.
So birch has that scent, that sort of wintergreen scent that people might recognize.
Right. The white birch doesn't, but the black birch or the yellow birch do. And it's just a very nice wood for the Yule log. And what you can do is write a petition on the birch bark and then burn the Yule log. And it goes, the smoke carries your intention up the chimney. I have tons of them. Cranberries.
I know. Well, let's say cranberries, because that's one of my favorites. I would say I almost eat it every day. I buy them frozen when they're not in season, and I add them even to steamed vegetables because I love that, non-sweet, just kind of tart little bite.
Well, they're very, very healthy, but cranberries are red, and the color red, of course, is ubiquitous at Christmas, really starting at Thanksgiving. It's the color of life, the color of life's blood, the color of fire, so you're wanting to strengthen the fire in the middle of the cold season. And cranberries are associated with love, with the heart. So you use them in love potions, and by love potion, I mean drinks featuring cranberries or cookies featuring cranberries, that kind of thing.
So if someone if they wanted to do a love potion, which is not unknown to Christmas, because what about the mistletoe?
Right, exactly.
So how would somebody
for love? I mean, I have a lot of potions in the book. Actually, I have a whole chapter just on drinks. That's why it's called Magic and Brews. And the cool thing is I list all the ingredients in the drinks, and I have African drinks, Central American drinks, all kinds of drinks. And I list all the ingredients, and then I list the magical properties of each of the ingredients. So what you're doing is you're actually making a potion. and you can make like a hibiscus tea, but put a few more things in there and it becomes a potion, So again, it's your intention. You can share it at your Christmas soiree, Yeah,
it makes it so much more powerful to have both the color, the scent, the herb, and the intention. Right. And it really, like you said, can create an amazing effect.
Yes.
You talked a little bit about the Yule log. And that's interesting because even on every TV station now, during Christmas, they just have this Yule log burning all the time. So what is the
people
significance
don't know why.
of that? Right, it's just there. It's like ubiquitous. So what is that about?
Well, again, that goes back at least 2,000 years, probably more. But back in ancient times, in the wintertime, you tried to, obviously you shut all the windows and doors because you didn't want the cold to get in. But the idea also, especially, the darkest time of year is from winter solstice to Imbolc, which is February 1st. But the darkest moon, the darkest time of year, there was always this fear of spirits, and I talk about a lot of these spirits. For example, there's Greek spirits that come up from underground. There's Germanic spirits that fly through the sky. I talk about many different cultures, but you're trying to protect yourself from the spirits. So the two places, even if you have the house shut up, the two places where they can still get in are the keyhole and the chimney. That's why there's such a focus on chimneys, because, Santa Claus can come down the chimney, so can La Befana. the Christmas witch, they can come down the chimney. So who else can come down the chimney? So what you do is you have this log that it's supposed to burn continuously for 12 days. So sometimes they would have a huge tree log, which as it burned, they would keep feeding it into the fire. And you always keep a little bit of the log at the end after 12 days to kindle the next year's log. And you also keep pieces of it to squirrel away in the attic and eaves of the house and so on as protection, magical protection. But you burn this log specifically to keep the nasty spirits from coming down the chimney. Well, that's really what it's for.
That is beautiful information, and I would thank you so much for being our guest today. And we've been talking with Ellen Evert Hopman about her new book, The Sacred Herbs of Yule and Christmas, Remedies, Recipes, Magic, and Brews for the Winter Season. What is the best place for people to go to find you, Ellen?
Well, I have a website, elleneverthopman.com, if you want to order a signed book. They make great Christmas presents. But you can also go to all the other places. Amazon, I have an author page on there, and all my books are on Amazon. Barnes & Noble, Simon & Schuster.
Well, thank you so much. So it's easy to find.
Yes.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in once again to Herbally Yours, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamai, at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.